Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles individuals who are passionate about what they do for a living, about what organization they belong to, or simply passionate about the community they are a part of. Hello there, and welcome. My name is Dave Cunningham. Pickleball. You know someone that plays, and these days interest in this sport is exploding. People of all ages are picking up their paddles and heading out to find a game. To get the full scoop on pickleball, we've invited the president of the local club, Ryan Haynes. Ryan, welcome to the program.
Thanks very much.
Ryan, you are the president of the Kingston Pickleball Club, and I think people have heard that phrase being thrown around quite a bit over the last few years. Why don't you describe for us exactly what pickleball is?
So pickleball is a wonderful sport. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the world. It's essentially a combination between tennis, ping pong, and badminton. So it's played on a badminton-sized court with a net that's lower, 36 inches at the end, 34 inches in the middle. So it looks like a miniature tennis game. And the paddles we use to play with are essentially ping pong style paddles, but 3 to 4 times bigger than a ping pong paddle. And it's a wiffle-like ball that bounces that we play with, and it's played over the net.
So the ball, we have one sitting in front of us, and it's a round plastic ball with holes in it, and there are some versions of the ball that have bigger holes or smaller holes. And what's the difference in terms of the size of the hole?
Yeah, so the outdoor balls are typically a little heavier, and the holes in them are a little smaller so that the wind doesn't have as much of an impact on it. And then when you have an indoor ball, you'll see fewer holes but larger, because we don't have to worry about wind at that point, and it's a little lighter as well because it doesn't have to fight against the elements the same way.
I was reading a little bit on the origin of the sport, and goes back to the mid-'60s, and I think it was somewhere in the States where it got started.
Yeah, it was invented on Bainbridge Island, which is in Washington State, not too far from Seattle. Mm-hmm. And it was really an invention out of boredom. They were trying to find something for the kids to do there, and they took some different equipment they had. They went up to their badminton court. They had a wiffle ball. I think they used ping pong paddles the very first time they did it. Mm-hmm. And they played on their badminton court over a low net, and it ended up that the adults loved it and cut their first paddles out of plywood and took over from there. And from that point, it's just grown and grown and grown until about the last 8 years where it's really had an explosion of growth.
The story I read was that the folks who were bored sitting around this badminton court couldn't find the badminton paddles or the equipment to play the game, so they improvised by using the ping pong paddles.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how did the name pickle come?
So there's two different accounts of how that started. The first being one of the families that invented it. It was actually their badminton court, the Pritchards. The wife, I believe her name was Joan. She called it pickleball because it reminded her of a pickle boat and rowing. And my understanding is that when a rowing team would go out, they'd fill their boats, and whoever was left over, they'd throw them in a boat at the end, and that was called the pickle boat. And so that aspect of throwing leftovers together, she saw the parallel to the game they had invented, and so she called it pickleball. There's also another version that says the dog, they had a dog named Pickles that chased down balls, and it was named after the dog. But I think the accurate history is the game had been around for a couple of years before the family had the dog. So
I like the dog story better than the boat story.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have this invention that takes place in the States, and it starts to get really popular, and it's become, as you said, much more popular in the last several years. I know we talked a little bit already about the rules of the game. It is played on a regulation badminton court, but you said the serve line is different, right?
Yeah, so the exterior lines, all the outside lines are the same as a badminton court, but the badminton service line is 6 inches closer to the net than the short service line, what we call the non-volley zone line in pickleball is. And that's a really important line and aspect of pickleball is that you have to be behind that line in order to play a ball out of the air.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's one of the key reasons that this sport is so attractive to all ages of players, all abilities of players, is you don't have the ability to just walk up to the net and slam balls away. So if you can play a touch shot, if you can hit a good drop shot just over the net, that opponent has to wait back and they can't slam it away. So there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of control. It's really a touch sport.
I've seen it played a couple of times, but only very briefly, and the impression I had is that people don't have to run as much in pickleball as they do in regular tennis.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason that pickleball has become so popular is two reasons. One, you're right. It's not as physically demanding as tennis or squash or badminton. With the smaller court and the ball bouncing, you can usually, if you position yourself well, get to most balls. I think the other thing is it's easier. It's slower moving than a tennis ball. Certainly at the lower levels, it's a lot easier to pick up. Your paddle face is closer to your hand. So for people who are just starting out for the first time, they'll have some success with pickleball right away, where other racket sports can be a little tougher to pick up.
Now, you were saying before we started to record that you don't often see 1 against 1. It's usually 2 against 2.
Yeah, so, there are people that play singles. It's much more physically demanding. Where I talked a second ago about having touch, singles really is more of a miniature tennis game where you're trying to smash the ball past your opponent, more so than playing, soft drop shots. So it doesn't seem to appeal to people nearly as much, and we don't see very much singles play in this area at all.
Okay, so it's primarily teams.
Yeah, primarily.
Do you have a sense as to, based upon any research you may have done, to know what age groups tend to play this game more so than other age groups?
Without a doubt, the sport is seniors driven. It's massively popular in Florida, in Arizona, and that's essentially how the sport's worked its way to this area and other parts of Canada, are people who have retired and wintering in the south and bring it back with them. But what we're seeing now is that there's a lot more youth getting involved. You're starting to see some schools do it, and at the competitive levels, most of the top players in the world are in their 20s and quite young. But I think in our area alone, I know my 9-year-old son plays, and we have a woman in our club, Lillian, who is in her 80s, and she's out once or twice a week playing. So yeah, it's great to see the wide age range, but for sure, it's seniors that have driven the popularity of the sport.
I know in a recent program I was speaking to Don Amos, who is the executive director of the Senior Center, and he was saying there's just an explosion of interest in pickleball amongst the seniors crowd.
Yeah.
So that confirms what you just said. What about the sport outside Canada and the U.S.? Are there people playing it in other countries as well?
Yeah, so it's starting now. Pickleball tourism is becoming more prevalent. In fact, I'm headed to Costa Rica on Friday with a group of friends from Ottawa. There's 11 of us going, and we all play pickleball, and there's a court at our resort, and we have 2 hours booked a day. And then all the other wonderful things associated with Costa Rica will be around that. But that's what brought us together, and that's the theme of the trip. So there's that. Europe, certainly in the UK, it's starting to become more popular. There's efforts been made. There's quite a bit of play starting in India, and even in Hong Kong. Recently, I saw there were some people playing in Hong Kong. So it's spreading out.
When you play a game, how long would a game last typically?
So one game, most games are played to 11. So a recreational game played to 11, where you win by 1 or maybe 2, depending on how many people are around, will usually take about 15 minutes
per game.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a long investment of time.
No.
Okay. All right. I guess the next step in the process is to talk a little bit about the history of the game here in Kingston. So, do you know roughly how long the game has been played here in town?
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I believe it's somewhere between 5 and 6 years. I know that Chuck McDonald, who's a really well-known local pickleball player, he's a great player. He's had a lot of success in big tournaments in the States, and he spends his winter in Arizona at Casa Grande, which is a pickleball mecca. And I know he was one of the driving forces behind getting the courts, the outdoor courts in Harrowsmith. They added pickleball courts to the tennis courts there. And that's still one of the core areas where people play in this area. There's 6 pickleball courts out there, and they're busy, several days of the week.
So when you talk about the game being played down south in Arizona or Florida, are they primarily playing outside?
Yes.
Okay.
Down south, it's very much an outdoor game. There are some indoor facilities, but certainly the purists like to play outdoors, and they frown a little bit upon indoor play sometimes. But
okay. There's always one in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're talking about those courts down south, so have they been adapted to pickleball courts, or are they just using a badminton court with a different service line on it?
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's safe to say that the pickleball, certainly in Florida and Arizona, is far more popular than badminton. And badminton's not a great outdoor sport anyways, because it's so susceptible to wind. So these are designated pickleball courts in a lot of these locations. So I'm on my way to the U.S. Open in April, and that's in Naples, Florida. And they have 51, it's either 50 or 51 designated pickleball courts. And it's a massive tournament. Well over 2,000 people, and when you try to register for it, it's typically full within the first 5 minutes of registration.
You're talking 2,000 participants or 2,000 spectators?
Participants.
Okay, participants.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, people literally stress out sitting at their computer waiting for the second that registration opens to try to get a spot in the tournament.
Now, is there any qualifications for you to be able to get into a tournament like that, or is it just first come, first serve?
So the U.S. Open is first come, first serve. There are some things you can do to give yourself a better chance. If you medaled last year, you'll automatically get in. If you buy one of their higher-end luxury packages, you might get a little head start. But they are headed in that direction. So I also made the trip to Indian Wells, California for the U.S. Nationals. And I qualified for that by winning the 35 plus 4.5 skill level that they go in ratings up to 5 in Portland, Maine at the U.S. Atlantic Regional. So that qualified me to get into
California.
Nationals. Yeah.
So they have a whole rating system.
Yeah.
So you're a good pickleball player.
You're
4.5.
Yeah, I compete at a high level.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about the tournaments that you have either participated in or gone to watch, primarily in the States. And let's get back to Kingston and talk a little bit more about the participation rate here, the number of people who are members of the club who play regularly.
So our official club membership right now seems to hover, I think it's touched on around 200 members. If we were to account for the Bath Pickleball Club and South Frontenac Pickleball Club and Gananoque and surrounding area, and the people who are actively playing but not necessarily a member of the club, I think we're probably in the ballpark of 600 players right now. If you'd asked me that question 2 years ago, my answer probably would have been around 300. So the sport's growing at a phenomenal pace. As a pickleball club, we've had discussions about growing this sport, but that's not our issue. Our issue is facilities for the players we have. Yeah, it's very difficult, particularly in the winter. We're working our best with the city. We've had limited success so far. Ideally, we'd have a location with a number of designated courts where our club could host larger events as a club. But that's one of our main goals that we're working towards.
So when you are in the summertime, you are playing primarily outside, I would assume, and where do you play currently?
Yeah, so we have 4 temporary courts. Some asphalt was poured for us on the old tennis courts at Bell Park. That's one location. there are 4 courts by LaSalle High School.
Okay.
That's a nice surface that we play at. And then the Henderson tennis courts, there's a couple courts there that get use as well. So we're spread out in the summer.
And then you have courts that are in Harrowsmith as well, right? That you have access to?
There's 6 courts in Harrowsmith, and there's regular play there. And then we do actually play inside at the curling club, the Royal Kingston Curling Club, during the summer quite a bit. We have evening league play in there because they take the ice out, and it's a nice flat surface for us, and we can fit 6 courts in there.
Now, when you're talking about playing on a particular surface, is concrete or asphalt the best thing to be playing on?
Not really. More of a hard tennis court surface is ideal. If you see the nice orange or green tennis courts, that specific surface is really nice to play on. Certainly indoors, there's an acrylic kind of poured rubber surface at RMC that's wonderful to play on, and even hardwood is usually fine to play on as well. But yeah, it's not ideal, but it gives a true bounce, and as long as we do a good job keeping it clean and not slippery, then it works well.
So bounce is the thing that you're looking to get from the surface that you're playing on.
Yeah, you want a consistent bounce, and the concrete's great for that. It's more it can be a little punishing on the body if you play on it for quite a while because it is quite hard.
In terms of indoor facilities that you've got right now, and I guess those are the ones that you're using in the wintertime, which ones are we looking at? Like, where do you play now?
So the club rents space at the United Free Methodist Church. I might have messed that up in Harrowsmith. They have a nice gym at the back of the church that holds 3 courts. So we take a little bit of space there. This time of year, it can be, weather can play a role in people wanting to go all the way out there.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people play at RMC, which is a great facility, but they won't rent space to us. So you go in and pay a drop-in fee, and you may or may not be able to get a court depending on what's going on there. So ultimately, we'd love to have our own space where we can control the use of it and provide a lot of different programs and options to our members. That's a little closer than Harrowsmith.
And that's the big thing, is finding a facility of your own so the club can organize, like you say, the different programs and tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In Kingston right now, do you have a sense as to the population mix inside the club, age range?
Yeah, we are all over the map. So for sure, I would say the majority of our members are, 55, 60 plus. But we do have quite a few younger members as well. One of the things Kingston's really well known for at this point are tournaments, both the great tournaments we host, but also we have a crew of players that travel pretty much anything they can drive to. So we always have a nice representation of Kingston at most of the provincial tournaments.
How often would a tournament like that take place during the course of a year?
I think we're on pace for something like 13 or 14 tournaments that we know of in the next 8 months. There's usually at least one a month that you can go play in.
How far would people be driving to go to one of these tournaments?
You'll see people. So I drove to 2 tournaments last year that were 7 hours, including that one in Portland, Maine. Most people, I think, tend to cap it around 4. If you get more than 4 hours away, you're not seeing too many people from further than that.
Is it a weekend thing that people are going for? Like a tournament would be over 2 days?
Yeah, typically it's a Saturday, Sunday event.
I'm interested in something that you mentioned earlier on in the program about tourist destination incorporating playing pickleball, and that seems to be something that you're thinking is going to be expanding.
Yeah, and you can see it now. There's so many options and little companies popping up that are offering pickleball tourism. And in some cases, it's a matter of a cruise ship that has courts on it now, or I've seen tours of a region where they travel each day but have places to play. I'm headed to Costa Rica leaving on Friday. I'm really going to miss the snow. I'm headed
You're
there.
Not going for pickleball.
Yeah. Well, and so there is a pickleball theme, and it's pickleball friends we're going with, and we'll be playing there every single day. So, yeah.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of tournaments that you are planning for Kingston to host, I'm told that you are looking to host 2 different national tournaments this year and next year.
Yeah, so we have hosted the Eastern Canadians the last 2 years, which went very well, and we were successful in our bid. We worked very hard on it. We had a lot of help from Tourism Kingston, but we were successful in our bid to host the Canadian Nationals for 2019 and 2020. And this will be the largest tournament that the province has seen. We hope it's the largest tournament that the country has seen. We have 28 courts available to us. We're going to be playing at the Invista Center, so we can have upwards of 600 people enrolled. And we'd be happy if we had more than 400, but we can handle more. So it's really, really exciting for us. We're going to have some of the best players in the world there. It's going to have great prize money. It's daunting but exciting at the same time.
That requires a lot of effort and a lot of people to get involved to host a tournament like that.
Oh yeah, and so the tournament at this level, keeping in mind that really we're a new sport, like we're growing. This tournament requires that every match is refereed. Any tournament that's happened here in the past, really it's only the medal matches. So you may get by with 5 or 6 referees. For this tournament, I need to have 28 referees at a time ready to go. So I just did a tour teaching ref clinics. I was in Coburg on Friday, Collingwood on Saturday, Kitchener on Sunday, London on Monday, and then I had a pleasant 7-hour drive home yesterday in the weather. But so there's a lot of work for us to do to get it ready, but we've got a great team here. We have a wonderful volunteer base in our club, and we're really confident that it's going to be a great nationals.
And what some people forget, when things like that come to Kingston, there is a spin-off to the community at large when you have so many people coming into town and staying here for the weekend.
Yeah, and that's where I think Tourism Kingston certainly, they were just wonderful because they are able to really put numbers. When I give them how many competitors are coming for how long, they're able to calculate all of that. We get support from the local hotels. We get some support from the city as well. So without a doubt, that kind of event, we're going to see people coming in 2-3 days early and enjoying the area, and so it definitely has a significant impact on the local economy.
And the goal is to have them come back to visit later on as well.
Yeah, and we have a tournament coming up in February, the Limestone Classic, that we run every year, and that keeps getting larger and larger and larger. So it's another opportunity. Maybe they come to that tournament next year as well. And
that's awesome.
Yeah.
We have run out of time on the program.
Okay.
And I thank you very much for your time, and all the best with the growth of pickleball in the community. All
right. Thanks very much, Dave. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Theme music for the program is Stasis Oasis, a tune written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of our episodes, please send a note to the Kingstonian Podcast Facebook page. This is Dave Cunningham from Kingston, Ontario. Thank you for listening. Until next time.